This is Vivo's new V29, so it's another new V series phone, the second of this year. And we have an improvement to the screen resolution, so it's a bit sharper now, still the 6.678 inches. The chipset is the Snapdragon 778G that is powering this, and we still have a very nice set of cameras and a very selfie-focused phone, I believe, that takes some very good selfies if you're into them, and portraits too as well, with a 50-megapixel front-facing camera that also does support 4K video. Now the rear camera, that's 50 megapixels with optical image stabilization, 8 megapixel ultra-wide, still we're seeing that, and 2 megapixels for depth information only, thankfully. And all up, it's a phone that has a lot on offer, very nice slim and light build. But is it worth its price tag of around about 500 euros? So this is what Vivo include in the box with the V29. We have a warranty card and product safety information, TPU case, which is clear. There is a SIM tray tool, which is off camera. And then we have our charger, which is their flash charge. So this is 80 watts max. And it is a Type C to Type A cable that is included in the box. So this model has now a sharper screen because of upped the resolution. It's now 1260 by 2800 pixels, and this gives us 453 ppi, and it is 6.78 inches. Now it's a light phone because we've gone with a plastic frame around the outside of it. It weighs just 196 grams, and the thickness is only 7.5 millimeters. We've got our power and volume up and down here on the right hand side. Good positioning for them, so I can easily get to that power button, just tap that. Fingerprint, however, is a little bit low, this reader, so it's there. I wish it was about here, but it does work really well. Just let me demonstrate that again. When I tap it, see, it unlocks. It took a split second longer, but I found the accuracy to be very good with this model. So we do have the Snapdragon 778G in this model here, so it does support 5G, and I like the material on the back of it here. You can see it's got this shimmer to it, and when you move it around, see how those bands are moving, the way it captures the light. It certainly makes it look a little bit different. So it is glass on the back of it here, it is glass on the front, but the frame, yes, that is plastic with this model. So we've got a Type-C port down the bottom, our secondary loudspeaker, or the single loudspeaker, which is a bit disappointing because up the top you see that there is no loudspeaker. We just have the microphone and it looks like an IR transmitter, but it is not. And then you see here too that the SIM tray, well, this one is taking 2 nano SIMs. So a bit disappointing with just the single loudspeaker. It should really have dual. It's not an amazing speaker either. You'll hear from my sample. And this Type-C port is USB 2 spec, so it's slow. It doesn't support video out either. Now, within it, we have a 4,600 milliamp hour battery, and the charging is the 80 watts wide, the charger that I showed you before. And then with our cameras, we've got the Aura light again, so you can adjust here the color of this light. It's quite bright. It's the whole circle there on the rear of it. 8 megapixel ultra wide only. Bit of a disappointment there. Wish it was at least 12 or 16 would have been better. And with autofocus for macro, and then we have a 50 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization as our main sensor there. And the selfie camera, this takes very good selfies, 50 megapixel, and it does have autofocus with this camera. The glass has a curvature to it as well, and looking pretty sharp with that 1260 by 2800 resolution here with it, 453 ppi. Now the display has a nice brightness to it. I'm measuring over 700 nits with it, and it is a good sharp display. This is the change they've had from the previous V series. They do release 2 models per year, and it's a welcome change. The sharpness, it's quite a good screen. I would say it's flagship level pretty much. So 120 Hz HDR10 plus support with it, and I'll show you that if you go into our display settings, that there are a few typical tweaks you can get that you'll find in Android. So you've got your eye protection mode, adaptive brightness is there. I've got it off at the moment, and you have the refresh rate. So you can set either 120 Hz or 60, or leave it on smart switch, which is the default, but I've forced it to 120, which is what I do prefer with this one. Screen colors, so just go in here, you can adjust them. Now the display, because of the curvature to it and the fact that it's an AMOLED, you do see colors shifting out on the edges, so you might notice a little bit of a blue tint right now here on the edge, okay? So you're going to see that, and it does fare really quite well in direct sunlight. As you can see now, this AMOLED with that brightness over 700 nits, you can still make out everything on the screen. It's relatively easy. It's not the brightest that you'll see in direct sunlight, but it does a fairly good job. So this is our UI, which is Fun Touch 13, and I find the performance to be very good. Now, I'm just going to scrape the surface here. I'm not deep diving into the UIs because the video would be a little bit too low for that, but note that the performance is very good, even with the Snapdragon 778G. I've had no issues with lag. I find it is well optimized from Vivo, and the animations are looking good, no noticeable stutters, and I don't mind it. As a UI, I think their launcher is fine. It gives us all the options you want. I have no problems with notifications. All up, in general, it is a good, I think, UI they have here, and that performance is solid. Of course, for my reviews, I always make sure I am on the latest firmware, and this is the version that I am reviewing it with, and I haven't noticed any bugs, no crashing issues at all, but they will be pushing out those firmware updates, which is good, on a regular basis. So when you first get it, there isn't really too much spam. We've got a lot of Google apps in here. There's a couple of things like vivo.com or something else you may consider to be a little bit bloatware-ish, but it's quite lenient, especially compared to some of the other manufacturers out there that do put a lot on there, like the Redmi phones, Poco, Xiaomi, Realme. Lots of advertisements, lots of games pre-installed. Well, not the case here. So we have a Widevine Level 1 cert. So yes, Netflix is working in full HD, and it does support, you can see here, HDR10 Plus and the HDR10 Normal 2 as well. Although with the Netflix app, it's not recognizing that it does have the HDR support. Camera 2 API, so level 3, this is the maximum. So if you are going to be using third-party camera applications, well, they will work with all of the cameras, which is good, including that selfie camera. And the audio bitrate, a little disappointing with video. I wanted to just capture this and point it out because it's 128 kilobits per second. I really do think that this should be around 256 or even 320 kilobits per second would be a bit better. This is almost the base bitrate, which by default is 96, so they've only increased that a little. It's just a minor nitpick there. Safety net status, yes, does pass that, which is good. This is a global version 2, by the way. And then our storage speeds here. So it's UFS 2.2, and the speeds are looking very good for this style of storage. No bottlenecks here. It's not going to slow us down. And the performance then of the Snapdragon 778 G, well, it's all right. It's mid-range. This is a mid-range phone, and I haven't noticed the UI lagging or anything. Gaming performance, it plays everything out there. You just won't be able to run the absolute top settings with the super demanding games without noticing occasional frame dips. But more on that gaming later on when I test out Genshin Impact. Now, battery life here, this is a fixed looping test, so it's not real world. This is 10 hours, which is pretty good considering the battery capacity. Well, this one is the 4,600 milliamp hours, but realistically looking around about 8 hours of on-screen time, which is reasonably good. I think it's decent, the battery life. And we do have the 80-watt charging, which I have timed here. It takes 40 minutes to go from 13 to 100%. So anything under an hour, I classify as excellent. It's good, and it's reasonably fast charging. Not the fastest out there, but still very decent. And what about thermal throttling? Well, none. The Snapdragon 778G is not super powerful, and it throttled only 0.3% in the 20-minute looping test. Very demanding, by the way, of the 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme test. So good result there. No throttling. I don't see throttling in-game either. It's quite a cool running chip. This brings me on to audio. We have just that single downward firing speaker, and well, it's okay. It's not amazing, but you do notice it now with all phones out there, literally all of them, with dual loudspeakers. It's just a missing feature that it really should have, and I don't understand why they couldn't make the earpiece also double as a secondary loudspeaker. So the sample I'll give you is at 100% volume with a NCS track here, just so I don't get any copyright strikes. But it'll give you an idea. It's okay. It could be a little bit louder. There is a bit of bass in there too as well. And what about our gaming performance? Well, it's not bad. I do have Genshin Impact here on the top settings and 60 frames per second. And you can see it is clearly playable. It's smooth. Now, there are a few stutters. It's no Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, the Snapdragon 778G, but the performance is pretty good. So all those titles out there, they will be all playable. You might just have to lower some settings down to get the best possible performance, such as a game like this one, Genshin Impact. I would probably run this just on the medium settings, so I didn't see those occasional stutters now and then. So with our Vivo V29, we've got 4K with a front-facing camera, 50 megapixel sensor with autofocus. It's good to see. And you can fit a lot in the shot because this is basically a wide-angled lens. Now I can apply a bit of digital zoom, so that's 1x now, and I can bring it up to a 1.3, so getting a little bit closer. And I go back to the ultra-wide camera. Well, not quite ultra-wide, but wide. Front-facing camera, it fits a lot in here, which is good. It's just the audio quality is my minor complaint here. I hope they can improve that bit rate. Main camera here, this is 4K 30, it does support 4K 60. It has optical and electronic image stabilization, 50 megapixels. So we can't go over to the ultra-wide because the ultra-wide camera being only 8 megapixels does not support 4K with it, so that's why we can't do that. Now I can apply a bit of digital zoom here. That is 2x digital now, which is okay. It's starting to look a little bit soft now. Stabilization I do like, seems to be working quite well. I'm just walking ahead. Now a little bit of a jog. It still seems quite steady. Let's have a look at the ultra wide now. So if you drop that resolution down to 1080p, you can shoot with the ultra-wide camera. And I find the quality of this ultra-wide to be disappointing. It's like the Xiaomi phones that also use the 8 megapixel cameras and the Realme phones that the sensor just isn't that great. The optics on it is okay, but not amazing quality here. It is definitely the weakest camera out of the 50 megapixel selfie and 50 megapixel rear camera. The electronic image stabilization, however, does work really well. I think it's aided by the fact, it definitely is, by the resolution of only being 1080p. And then our camera sample. So this is the main camera, 50 megapixels, does take an okay looking shot. And the portrait shots are my favorite. So the grass is looking very green, but it's how it is. A little bit saturated, yes. And the stitching is very good with those portrait shots and a pleasant looking photo. I do like them. So this here is our ultra wide, which is the weaker camera of all the cameras we do have with it. And this is now our main camera. A bit of an overcast day, but it did reasonably well. It was looking like that, a little bit gray. And another shot here with the ultra wide. So the ultra wide, for me, is a little bit weak, this sensor. I really wish they would upgrade it. Now, the selfie shots do look very good. So this is just a standard selfie, 50 megapixels with the autofocus, and now a portrait selfie. So a lot better than other phones out there. And this is basically flagship level. The photos with very colorful, bright objects tend to come out reasonably well, as you can see from this shot. And this is the main camera again. I think overall, in daylight, you are going to get good shots out of that main camera. And this is another sample too. Shame it was a bit overcast, but still doing a great job. And then the night mode, so this is with the normal mode, taking a photo, and then our night mode enabled. You can see it brightens things up quite a bit, but there is a lot of noise left and right in this photo. So I like the selfie camera on this model. It's very good. The fact that it's a wider camera too than what you typically see. You don't have to really stretch right out to get those shots. You put it in the 0.8 shot mode, and if it's a bit more in, then you've got the 1x a little closer. And the selfie and the portrait shots do look very good. Video quality, 4K vlog footage, not even some flagships that I do cover have that. So really good to see with a mid-range phone. The screen is fantastic. It's bright, it's clear, it's sharp. That AMOLED 120 Hz looks really good. Yes, it's got the curvature to it, but it does suit the phone having the rear glass also curved, and it's a good weight. It's just over 185 kilos and nice and slim too at that 7.5 millimeters. So all up, it is a phone that offers a lot. It's got some areas that are basically flagship level, like the selfie camera. The build quality, not a metal frame, plastic, not too bad. Bitrate with audio could be a little bit better. And I would like to see some improvements to the ultra wide, which is a bit of a letdown. The 8 megapixel, not because it can just only shoot 1080p video, but when you take a look at the stills, especially around the edges of it, it is lacking. The optics and the resolution could be better. And I feel for the price tag around 500 euros, Yes, it's great for the selfie camera, for the screen, what's on offer, the performance. It's a definite mid-range chip here, the Snapdragon 778G. It's still pretty much good at everything. It's not quite flagship, but you could spend a little more and import yourself, say, another model that does have a flagship spec. So I feel that the Vivo V29, I would love to see them work on the pricing. It does feel a tad overpriced to me with all that is on offer, but it's a very solid phone here. I really do like what I'm seeing with the Vivo V29 here. Thanks a lot for watching this review.